Other discussion?
Sue said what I was going to say.
Okay, Tim?
Well, I'm satisfied with what I've heard, both from the county and during the public hearing. So that having been said, I'm going to make a motion to, I'll move that we approve the rezone ordinance under suspension of the rules, requiring 3 separate and complete readings, and that it be read by title and published by summary.
May I add the part about and approve the associated development agreement?
Well, I made the assumption if it gets a second that that'll be another motion.
Oh, okay, because that was included in the act, okay.
Should
Just
it be?
comment here, because the 5 conditions are folded into these documents, and that was what Sue was alluding to.
That, well, the
Is
development
there-
agreement's separate than the 5 conditions.
Yeah, and so in terms of the approval of the ordinance as being a separate motion, or do you recommend that these are bundled?
Yeah, separate motion for the development agreement
Okay.
and the
All right.
ordinance? Yes, they
Okay.
should be separate motions.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Tim's motion, do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay, we have Tim's motion and Sue's second. Further discussion, Tom?
Well, I had the same question that Walter did about the necessity of the rezone, but I think as was raised within the public hearing, but I think I've had that answered with the, the rezone versus a special use permit. So I'm okay with the rezone. I think it seems funny to have to rezone it for just a parking lot, but that's how it seems that we've, drafted it up. I think with the 5 conditions as set forward by P&Z, I'm much more comfortable with it.
And Walter?
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have any problem with what's the motion or with the 5 conditions with the following exception, and that is what Tim Brown brought up earlier in 1F regarding storage area for trailers, and I would add boats. I see the sheriff department parking what I would call emergency command trailers on the lot to the west. And I understand from staff that they currently, personally, don't see that as a conflict. I heard what Mike said about principal uses, et cetera. As the commissioner said, staff comes and staff goes, just like commissioners and council people come and go. So I am uncomfortable with the restriction on trailers, and the reason I keep boats in there, I don't know if the sheriff has a boat for Spring Valley Reservoir or not, but he could. He could have a boat for Spring Valley Reservoir in case of an accident or drowning or whatever. So I would propose and make a motion to amend the original motion to strike trailers and boats from 1F.
Okay, we have Walter's motion. Do you hear a second? Okay, not hearing one, we'll carry on with the motion on the floor. Other discussion, Wayne?
I agree in part, Walter, with what you're saying. I don't know if we want to strike that in its entirety, because some of the comment made by Dave was that it'd be accessory use to the sheriff's office. Now, at the same time, I don't think, as we get down and Commissioner McGraw's gone and we have other commissioners, I wouldn't want to see some creep into that lot where you actually have other trailers, and maybe the current sheriff or the commissioners say, well, yeah, you can store your boat there. And so next thing you know, you have
All the commissioners'
county
votes.
employees or commissioners storing their house trailers and their boats in that lot, and that certainly would not be appropriate. However, if it's command use trailers, and as I said, accessory uses to the sheriff's office or the county, then that would be more applicable. So I would think that would need to be reworked a little bit. Now, while I'm at the floor, I'll just say one other thing, and I understand what you gentlemen were saying about your concern about having general business and business creep into your neighborhood. But with the conditions that are there, and with the R4 setbacks that are still required, I would think that having that type of a use, which would be allowed there, would be preferable to having high-density residential developed in that lot right behind you, with maybe an 8-plex or whatever would be allowed with the associated noise and traffic, because this would substantially be less with the current use of with the general business.
Okay, we'll go on to Dan.
I think, and I think Tom's probably thinking the same thing I am. I'd like to make an amendment that we, at the end of the provided that any such area shall not be used as sales or storage area for mobile homes, trailers, boats, or heavy equipment, add in except that which is accessory to the sheriff's department. I mean, that way it covers those trailers.
Okay, that's a motion.
That's my motion, to amend it to change that to,
Second that.
The maker of the original motion will accept that amendment.
No, well, we'll get a second on the, you're going to second that amendment?
Wayne does.
Wayne seconded that, okay. And I'm hearing some rumbling here about whether it's accessory to the sheriff's office or to the
or
courthouse.
to the courthouse in
And so-
general.
Courthouse?
I mean, as far
Is
as
that your
I,
intent?
I mean, I guess we could say to the courthouse proper.
And I'm looking at staff's furrowed brows over here. Bill?
My general recommendation would be accept that is accessory to a permitted principal use.
Okay.
So you're not tying it specifically
To that department.
to a individual user, but so long as it's accessory to a permitted principal use, then it would be allowable.
Okay, let's say accessory to permitted principal use.
Spit her out.
Is that good with you?
Yep.
Wayne, that's okay?
That's
With you as
fine.
the seconder? Okay.
Okay, there is,
Okay, I'm going to go to Walter next.
A question for Bill.
Yes, sir.
Wayne seconded.
No, did Dan accept?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yes.
Where, Bill, where in the rezone that we're considering passing does it talk about principal use?
Well, the ordinance itself lists item number 1. These are the allowable, shall be restricted to those listed as permitted uses in the GB district that do not exceed. Such allowable uses shall be included and be limited to, and then in the ordinance, I'm reading the old ordinance,
A through H.
A through H. So those are essentially the uses that it is limited to.
Where does it say that lot is being rezoned for the courthouse or the sheriff's office or a government entity or something? I'm trying to tie
that's general
back to
business.
principal use, and I haven't spotted it yet. I'm asking you to take me there, please.
So the items that are listed.
Principal use talked about tonight is the courthouse and the sheriff's office, but that's just us folks tonight.
Well, correct, and that's not, when I use the term principal use, that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to the list of A through H, well, at least A through G, in the ordinance, are the principal uses that are being limited, that the property is being limited to in this ordinance. So those lists of uses, if you were to look at the zoning code and look in the GB district, those are listed as permitted principal uses.
And where does the courthouse and the sheriff's office, if I may?
So they would fall in
there?
item number D.
D?
That would be item number D.
Governmental
which is
offices.
Schools, commercial schools, churches, synagogues, mosques, governmental offices, libraries, museums, art galleries, police or fire stations, and similar public or private institutions.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question.
I misunderstood the answer.
Sue, I had your
Okay.
hand next.
If it were to be, if we do this rezone, however you do the rezone, if it were to be used as a parking lot, it needs to be developed as a parking lot with all of the drainage and the paving and all that. So right now, it's not going, with the rezone, that doesn't permit it to be a parking lot unless they come back and develop it as a parking lot. So this storage would have to be very temporary storage, because it can't be parked as a parking lot. Is that, or can you make it clearer, Bill,
That
please?
is correct. There are development standards for parking lots that are open and made available to the public or used for the parking of vehicles that come and go on a regular basis. What we've characterized the trailers as more of a storage yard, not necessarily a parking lot, so that doesn't necessitate or require all the public improvements associated with a parking lot. If the county wishes to use it as a parking lot, then those standards would apply, so all of the surfacing, the subgrade surfacing, drainage, detention, landscaping, all of those improvement standards would apply.
Just FYI.
Okay, Tom?
I just wanted to make the point, which I think is correct, the principal use would carry to the next owner. So for example, if the county, like commissioners change, property owners change, and if the county were in the position or needed to sell the property, they could, and it would be general business, still zoned as general business, and it would,
With the setbacks, with our
with
four
all the
setbacks.
restrictions that we have here. So the principal use, if it becomes a private club or fraternal society, the boats and trailers would be associated with whatever fraternal society or private club if they were the next owners of the
Floats.
property.
If it's a boat outfit.
Floats, trailers.
I'm just saying that we're doing a rezone here, we're not authorizing any particular specific use, right? I mean, that's my understanding of what we're doing. So it's not, we're not, I mean, we don't know it's going to be a parking lot, we've been told that's the intention, but
They moved the
whatever
courthouse over there.
whatever restrictions we want to make sure that they work for whatever future use. So if we're putting in exceptions about boats and trailers and stuff, we need to know that that is equally applied to whatever other owner, not just the county courthouse or the Latah County.
So you're giving kind of a cautionary statement about unintended consequences.
just-
Something
right.
other than a sheriff's trailer could
Right,
be
we're-
afloat for some
We're
fraternal
rezoning
organization.
because,
Could be fire trucks, could be.
right, I'm just saying, right, it could be whatever is in this list that is allowed.
Okay,
So I'm just trying to say that, make sure that when we make, exceptions, that we're doing so with intent. That's all I'm
okay.
saying.
Gary?
Just for a moment, we want to clear the record here. Dan, you accepted Bill's recommendation for your motion to amend. You seconded the original motion to amend.
Wayne did.
Wayne did?
Wayne seconded, and he approved the language.
You accepted that?
Yes, he
Okay.
did,
Yeah.
about accessory to permitted principal use.
This is voting on the amendment. This is voting, they have to vote
So
on
the
the
amendment
amendment
was
first.
Dan's motion, and it was seconded by Wayne.
So you need to vote on the amendment and then
First,
vote
we're
on the
we're
amended
discussing it
motion.
right now.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And
Bill?
If I might just clarify one element. So the limitation or the modification of the language regarding the boats or trailers would only apply to the property under question. The existing GB properties have the language that's in the draft ordinance today. So there is, you'll have a bit of a minor distinction between the two properties with that, small addition to the ordinance. So even though that may be excluded here, the language will still be the same, and what will be enforced in effect in the property adjacent to the west will be what was passed in 2003.
Okay.
I'd prefer to have the two lots be the same, or
have
they,
the same language.
yeah, have the same language.
That's my feeling.
I mean,
Well, it seems more
Okay.
commonsensical to have them the same.
What are you fussing about down there? You're not coming through clear down on this end.
we
What's
think
your
that all of
concern?
the lots should have the same language, therefore I'm not in favor of the exception of the amendment.
Okay. Walter?
Then why not put the exception on all the lots?
Because I'm not going there.
No, you guys are
That's not
making this.
I'm not going there.
You're making it harder than it
You're
has,
getting,
harder
you're
than it
getting
has to
carried
be.
away here. If I may,
Wayne?
speak to Tom's concerns. You're concerned about us doing a special exception for the sheriff's office. The only exception would be, as it says, that there cannot be any boats or trailers, other than, however we worded that the courthouse and sheriff's department, accessory uses can be put there. Anybody else, if they sell that lot to somebody else, to a private individual, they're still locked in on these five items that stipulate what can be done.
So Wayne, just for clarification, the amended language was for accessory to permitted principal use, and the principal use in this could include lodges, private clubs, fraternal societies, schools, commercial schools, all of those things. So The concerns expressed down here have to do with what if those permitted principal uses chose to have accessory uses in parking their floats, or their trailers, et cetera. So it's not just the sheriff's office or the courthouse, and that's what the language, the discussion's happening down here,
Right, so
and about unintended
Yeah.
consequences.
The way that I read F is sales and storage area for mobile homes, trailers, boats, or heavy equipment. As, to me, this reminds me of the quarry on the Moscow-Pullman Highway where people are parking their motorhomes, their trailers, their buses, their whatever, for the entire winter or for, 50 weeks of the year, except for the 2 weeks that they take them out. That I don't see, that's the way I read this, and the long-term storage. So I think putting a crime trailer or an evidence trailer or that kind of thing is not the same. So that's why I didn't have a concern with it, and I didn't think it needed to be changed.
And I think Mike spoke to that in his remarks, saying that would be considered accessory under the existing language without the proposed amendment tonight.
Correct.
Okay?
Okay,
So
well,
further discussion about this before voting on the proposed amendment to this.